welcome to MST and Eastern's Open Week, and to this webinar, which is about how vocational training and internships can help your church grow. Whether you're a pastor of a church or someone interested in training, we hope that this webinar will be really helpful for you, and look forward to sharing this information and also answering any questions you might have. My name's Jude Long. I'm Vice Principal Academic of MST and Eastern Colleges. Prior to coming to MST about 18 months ago, I was the principal of Noongalingya College in Darwin, which is the Aboriginal Bible College specialising in vocational education courses. Vocational education courses are wonderful. They're practically orientated and fantastic at giving people the opportunity to learn skills of ministry without the expectations of research and essay writing that are really part of higher education courses. I'd like to introduce you to our two presenters for today. Firstly is Stephen Andrews. He is the coordinator of the Certificate 4 in Christian Ministry and Theology course. Stephen has a long association with MST, graduating in 2003 with a Masters of Divinity in Biblical Studies. This equipped him for a time of service with pioneers in Mauritius, where he and his family were involved in church planting among Muslims, training church leaders through reopening a small Bible college, and co-founding a missioners education primary school, and more recently a secondary school. Prior to heading overseas, Stephen was the youth pastor at Canterbury Baptist Church and also involved in the Christian Union at Deakin University, where he studied accounting and enjoyed in participating in summer coffee shops with Youth Dimension. Our second presenter is Damon Sokolowski. One of the exciting developments this year has been our partnership with the churches of Albany in Western Australia. Damon is the training director of the Great Southern Training Hub at Albany, Western Australia. The Training Hub is the initiative of Albany Baptist Church in conjunction with a number of the churches in the region, with the aim to equip local Christians for leadership, ministry and life. Damon has been involved in church planting and evangelistic ministries, as well as Christian education, and is passionate about seeing Christians trained in their local contexts. He oversees the Training Hub's internship program, which utilises Eastern's Certificate 4 in Christian Ministry and Theology. If you have any questions as we go through this webinar, please feel free to type them into the Q&A box rather than the chat. We'll be using the chat to communicate with you, but we'd love to hear your questions and we'll have a time to answer them at the end. We will be recording this webinar as well, and right now I'd like to hand over to Stephen. Thanks, Stephen.
Thanks, Jude. Yes, thank you, Jude, for the introduction, and welcome everybody to this webinar. I'm so glad you've taken the time to join us. Yeah, I think we're looking at a subject that's obviously of interest to you. It's certainly of interest to me and for the churches here in Melbourne and more broadly. I guess the interest for me in vocational training begins a number of years ago, and formed through some reading I've done, in recent times and through the past. I think Doug McConnell's recent book actually really highlighted for me the importance of culture and how in our context of culture we learn from imitation. We imitate those who are around us. And Doug McConnell was good, I think, and right to highlight the importance of formation happening in the context of people imitating those around them. And vocational training allows us in a workplace ministry context to really give some thought to imitating those around us, putting into practice the things that we see others doing. That's from a cultural perspective, an influence. I think the other book that really influenced me some years ago was The Trellis and the Vine. And perhaps some of you have read this by Colin Marshall and Tony Payne. And I noticed one of our former principals, Michael Rater, comments here in the beginning of the book of his excitement for this book, and he says that this will certainly be a set textbook for BCV as MST was known. Colin Marshall and Tony Payne, they give a lot of thought to church ministry, local church ministry, and the importance of seeing pastors and I guess elders involved in the formation of their people. Seeing pastors and elders not just as the more narrower view of a pastor, but perhaps more broadly as a trainer. And so they encourage this concept of allowing training to occur within the context of a local church. Reading through that, there was a lot in this book, The Trellis and the Vine, that really influenced me in my thinking and really excited me for local church ministry and training within the context of the local church. I guess this comes out of the New Testament itself, doesn't it? As we go back to Timothy and just reflect for a moment on that, what's likely to be Paul's last letter that we have at least preserved for us. It's in the latter years of Paul's life. He's facing death, and he writes to his dear son, Timothy. And I guess these are his last words, if you like, before he heads to be with his heavenly Father. He says to Timothy some very important things, and one of them, of course, is captured there in chapter 2, verse 2. And you'll remember these verses, I'm sure. He says, "And the things you have heard me say in the presence of many witnesses, entrust to reliable men who will also be qualified to teach others." I guess in this verse, it captures something of Paul's heart to see not only Timothy equipped for ministry, but Timothy equipping others who will have the capacity to equip others. This clearly needs to be incorporated into our local church context, this aspect of equipping and training those that will follow in our footsteps. Of course, we need to find and see other leaders raised up who will replace us generationally as churches go on from generation to generation. Of course, we need to see new leaders raised up to serve the church from generation to generation, but also within our generation for church planting. As we plant churches, we need elders, we need pastors, we need leaders. And so this instruction from Paul to Timothy is a means of guarding the gospel, preserving the health and life of the church through training. Paul equipping and encouraging Timothy to do what he's done with others in the life of the church. I was really encouraged to recently read an article or a little journal actually put together by 9 Marks about shepherding. And they too, in there, highlight the importance of shepherds or pastors ensuring that they're training up other pastors and shepherds within the context of the ministry. Now, I know, having done some pastoral ministry myself, it's very difficult to find the time with the many demands on pastoral life and ministry. And of course, Colin Marshall and Tony Payne refer to that. They reflect on the choices we need to make in church leadership. They encourage us to carve out just a little time, if we can, in our weeks to invest in others. Now, this could take the form of a formal internship program of some sort in the life of your church. And that's what we want to encourage actually through this webinar, and touching on that in the local church context with what we're offering here at MST Eastern, and bringing those two things together in the formation of your people in your local church context is something that we're really excited about and want to encourage. I guess the concept of internship, really going back a little further, is related to the concept of apprenticeship. And when we think about apprenticeship, of course, we can go all the way back to the Gospels, can't we? And see even the way Jesus relates to his Father as his mentor, as his master Jesus as his apprentice. That's particularly expressed in John chapter 5, where Jesus is relating to his Father as a master. He does what he sees his Father doing in obedience, in faith, in trust. And then in turn, as Jesus is an apprentice to the Father, then Jesus' disciples, following the same model, his disciples are an apprentice to him, Jesus, the Master. So this concept of learning in the context of life, learning through the passage of time. And of course, as we read the Gospels, we see the disciples interacting with Jesus, reflecting on, well, what happened there, and raising questions, times of reflection, times of retreat and prayer, as Jesus forms and creates discipleship in these disciples that are walking closely with him. So there's a little bit of background that influences us as we think about what we're trying to achieve with our CMT, as it connects with churches who are committed to training in their local contexts. As Jude mentioned, Damon, and introduced Damon over there in WA. We really are excited about what Damon and his team are doing in WA. And as we've been partnering with them this year, we thought it would be wonderful to allow Damon the opportunity to share how this partnership between local church and MST Eastern is proving fruitful in his context. So Damon, would love to hear from you now. Thank you, brother.
Thank you, Stephen, and thank you, Jude, for those and great words there, Stephen. I think in terms of motivations for why you would want to train and equip God's people, and the disciple-making disciples at 2 Timothy 2:2 are so key. That was excellent. And I presume if you've tuned in now, then you're on about that, or you want to be on about that, and you want your church to be on about that. And look, I'm in quite a privileged position in my role down here in Albany, Western Australia. So from the free state of Western Australia, although I'm not so sure, it feels like there's an iron curtain across our border. So I don't know who's free and who's not at the moment. But wherever you are, it's so glad you're here. So look, my role, I oversee what we call the Great Southern Training Hub, runs out of Albany Baptist Church in WA. And while Albany Baptist Church, I guess, is the sort of the benefactor behind the training hub, it's really now a connection of a group of churches in our region, both Baptist and other, who are committed to training and discipling people within their own local contexts. But we've been able to do something where we've been able to pool our resources, and the sum of the whole is greater than just the sum of the individual parts. So look, a little bit of the history about how things got kicked off here in Albany. So I think it was about 15 years ago, someone came to the church and said, hey, one of our members came up and said, I've got 20 grand. I want to give it to something, but I don't just want to give it to anything. I want it for something specific. Is there anything the church wants that we could invest this in? And the pastor at the time had the foresight to say, I know exactly what that is. We need to invest in ministry training locally, and we want to invest in an internship. And so they use that money to set aside a bit of time to start thinking through how they can train people better locally. So obviously, you're doing that, your Bible studies, your weekends and all that, but I guess another step up in terms of how can we be more serious about discipling, particularly our key leaders coming through, or people considering ministry or just wanting to deepen their faith. And so that led to the formation of a one-year internship program. At the time, they just drew on different resources and what they'd learned at Bible college and what have you to create a program. And a few people were doing that each year from Albany Baptist. And then about 5 or 6 years ago, something happened in the region where a bunch of new leaders came in around a similar time with a very similar philosophy of ministry. And with that was this desire to train people. And again, as I mentioned before, there was this sense of, hey, we could do things better together. We're all on about the same gospel here, the same Jesus. We have very similar philosophy of ministry outlooks. So how can we pool our resources to do this well? And one person in our church at the time worked in the vocational education training space and said, hey, do you know, we could actually couple the internship with an actual qualification. So like, as good as it was doing what they're doing, it's fantastic, but we can actually couple it with what they call a certificate for in Christian ministry and theology, so that people can be doing the internship while also working towards a qualification. And it also gave it, I guess, you talk about the trellis and the vine, Colin Marshall, it gave some more trellis and some more supporting structure for the program and where things are going. Also, I think pitching things at the right level, because there's something about the VET space, the vocational education training space, and the certificate for, which I think sits between, you know, if you're going to go to MST and do your Bachelor of Ministry or MDiv, or, you know, you're a part of Bible study and growing, but there's something that can sit in between that, which I think is really healthy. And it's this apprenticeship model of ministry training, which the certificate for is aimed at. So, yeah, and the apprenticeship model in terms of learning from practitioners who are currently in their field as well. Sorry, Stephen, not to diss you who are now in academic land, you know, but, you know, obviously something about learning from pastors who are currently dealing with pastoral issues and things, and the running of a church and marriage breakdowns and all the other things, and marrying young couples, all the things that happen, supporting missionaries. And so, yeah, so they worked out, look, we can use the certificate for, run it with our internship over 1 year, and let's see how that goes. And that's what they did. And so now we partner with Eastern College Australia to offer the certificate for Christian ministry and theology face-to-face locally. So I know there's a few different ways, probably Stephen will talk about it later. They've obviously got the online mode, but we've actually, because we've been able to pool resources, we can offer the Cert for face-to-face as a training site of Eastern. So our pastors and what have you have got their theology training. They've then gone and got their training and assessment, certificate for training assessment, which you need in the vet space. And those two together, then we have become a training site of Eastern College. And our interns actually enroll as students of Eastern. So they're a part of a larger network as well, which is great. And we also then have the support and the collegiality of being able to chat with Stephen and Jude and others at Eastern. So in terms of background, like I said, someone invested, a pastor had the vision that this needed to happen. And then people started working out the resources. And now we've got this partnership with Eastern. And we've got this year, we've actually had, I think we started with 18 interns this year from 5 different churches. So we had Baptist, Anglican, a slightly conservative charismatic church. There was another one, someone from Brethren Church, Church of Christ, and from our region as well. And so Albany's kind of unique in some ways because it has its own hinterland. So Perth is far enough away from Albany that people would come to Albany for something like this. And also there's a desire for things to happen locally, that people want that face-to-face experience and training and don't want to have to go away to do training. And particularly, like I said, this in-between point between, so before going to Bible college and, you know, your Bible study, like this Cert for sits in this nice space in between. So look, if you're considering starting or running an internship, I mean, it starts with, I think, the leaders. If you're a leader, like having that vision, that 2 Timothy 2:2, and then getting your other leaders and people behind it. And it is going to take time. It is going to take some resources to invest in that. Look, I thought a couple of positive things we've got ahead. So one is the network. So one of my key roles is really, I guess, developing and maintaining and growing relationships between churches and pastors. And so we work quite hard to partner well. In fact, this year, our church has been renovated, and we've actually partnered with Living Water Anglican Church to use their space this year. So for running the training. And so even that visual demonstration of partnership, of using different spaces, is just such a testimony to the gospel down here. So look, I thought it'd be worthwhile as well to, I guess, share a few little stories around people who've come through our internship program. And then Stephen and others may have a few more questions about what we've had going on here. So in our context, interestingly enough, even though a regional area, we've got quite a few Karen people that have come from Thailand as refugees. And we actually have a Karen language Baptist church as a part of our church space. We've also got some Noongar Aboriginal people in our congregation as well, quite a large Noongar community in Albany, and Filipinos and other cultural groups represented, and of course our Anglo-Aussies, or people like me who have surnames not so Anglo, but obviously from European descent. So look, I'll tell you, so last year there was a young guy named Dan. He was an electrician, so he's in his 20s, and he got his Sparkies ticket, but he had a sense of, hey, I want to explore the possibility of me doing ministry longer term. So we encouraged him to do the internship last year, and I actually personally mentored him as well. And so through the year, we went through all the units and what have you. I was mentoring and working through him. You know, where's God taking you? Where's this going to go next? And through the year, I mean, it started off the year, I thought, oh, we'll see how this guy goes. You know, sort of a happy-go-lucky Aussie, bit of a larrikin. But as he got opportunities to grow, to lead, to sow into different ministry spaces, you just see God fanning into flame the gift within him, and seeing him stepping up as a leader, as a communicator of the gospel, as someone who wants to then disciple other people. And by the end of the year, he would have been one of our key leader types. We had about 10, I think we started with 12 last year. I think we finished the year with 10 interns. You have a bit of natural attrition for different sickness and other things that come up. But by the end of the year, Dan was one of our probably key leaders of that group. And we then sent the team away for a short-term trip to Thailand. And he was one of our key guys over there. Got to the point there where we realized, hey, we want to encourage him to go on and do more study. So he's now started the Bachelor of Ministry by doing the certificate for CMT. And he's also got a couple of units, I think 2 units credited from the Cert 4 towards his Bachelor of Ministry, which he's happy about. And so it really, last year was a testing ground for him, both for him personally and for us as well, to see is this a guy we want to invest in and who could potentially be a youth pastor or associate, or we sent him out as a pastor or missionary elsewhere. So he's really encouraging story. We actually had 3 people from last year who this year have gone on to do further theological study because they realized, yeah, this is the direction I want to go. This year we've had a couple of Karen background people. So like I said, 2 who are school leavers. So they've finished year 12 last year. They thought, hey, this would be a good gap year. In fact, one guy who, I don't know how he came through the cracks, but anyway, he managed to go on this mission trip last year. I know it was because he was going to be one of our translators. That's right, on this trip to Thailand. But he wasn't yet a Christian. He called himself a Christian, but while he was on the mission trip, Jesus got him, and he became a believer. He came back so full of life and energy, and he didn't even know how to explain it. And we're like, oh, okay, we'll see how this goes. Hopefully it's not the seed that just springs up and goes nowhere. And so I got the guy, so Dan, I ended up getting him to take on this young guy, EL is his name, and disciple him over the summer. And over the summer, EL then said, I want to do the internship next year. And we were like, oh, he's I don't even know, is he there yet? Where is he at faith-wise? We're praying and asking God for discernment, and eventually encouraged him towards doing the internship. And he got baptized the day before the internship started, right? And this year he has just grown remarkably, soaking in God's word and community and growing in his faith and understanding, to the point where I just heard a few weeks ago that he started a Bible study with a bunch of his non-Christian mates from school. And he's like giving them the gospel. So, and look, and that is a testimony, one-on-one discipleship, but 2 to the internship program. We've also had some Noongar background people, including a 71-year-old grandmother who cares for an extended family. She's a real matriarch, a wonderful, beautiful, godly lady, Aboriginal lady. Who's had a very tough life, actually. But she's 71, and she said, I want to keep growing. I want to keep getting to know God more and become more effective and use this last part of my race well. And so she's plugged into our internship this year. She certainly found some of the study a bit of a struggle. The Cert 4 is really accessible, and you're working towards getting people over the line. But just having people like that, their gravitas and their wisdom as a part of the group has been fantastic. And then we've got people all over. We've got a lady who's just hit 40, midway through her career, kids out of home now, and she thought, I feel like I'm at the midway point of my Christian life. I really just want to spend some time reflecting and going deeper into the Word and just asking some questions and going, how am I going to use this next part of my life? What am I going to do from here on if I make it another 20, 30, 40 years and so on? And we've got young mums as well, a young mum who had their first child, only a few months old, and her and her husband decided it'd be good so she's actually the wife of a pastor down here, and the church was really supportive, wanting to get her in the internship to just help strengthen and grow her in her own faith, and supporting her husband and her own ministry within the church. And I believe she is in fact pregnant again, so she's managed to fit it in between babies doing this internship year. So a really eclectic bunch from a group of churches, which I think strengthens it as well. So, Stephen, I might pause there and just see if there's any questions or things you wanted me to pursue, or what others might want to say.
Well, thanks, Damon. I mean, that was just a terrific insight into your life and ministry there in Albany. And thank you for sharing those stories, because that just brings to life what we're really on about, what we're talking about when we're talking about how internship programs can actually help your church grow. They're just some really clear examples of what we're talking about. Thanks, Damon. And I guess just talk through maybe a little bit on how you do it face-to-face. Like, we're wanting people to come face-to-face into Wantirna, but how is it that you can do the CMT face-to-face? What is it that you have there in Albany so you can do that? Yeah,
thanks, mate. Yeah, good question. So, also you have a building space, a physical space for meeting in, and just must give glory to God. We've just been working on this new building renovation, and we've actually created a new training room as part of our facilities, an 80-seat capacity room for this sort of stuff, to train interns. I have a dedicated space to use. Obviously, we'll use it for other things as well. So the structure of our year and even just week is interns come together face-to-face on a Thursday. So they're there all day together. We break up the day into two sections. So the morning they focus on one unit. So I know next year we're changing some units slightly, but this term, for instance, I'm running a unit on evangelism and ethics, just communicating the gospel. And then in the morning, we've got our senior pastor, Phil Beck. He's running a unit on knowing God, which is effectively a doctrine, Christian beliefs unit. So they spend the morning with Phil, the afternoon with me. It's more sort of lecture, seminar style, but lots of discussion, and not just sitting there getting information, but getting them thinking and discussing and reading things and presenting. So it's quite hands-on. So Thursdays all together. And we recommend that interns set aside at least 2, if not ideally 3 days a week for doing their internship for the year. So like I said, a day together for the sort of lectures, seminar component on a Thursday. We then say they really need about a day for study, reading, reflection, mentoring. So we have mentors they need to meet with weekly, their assessment tasks and so on. So we say that you probably need to set aside a day a week for that. And then we'd expect a day a week of hands-on ministry. So, that could look like, co-leading a Bible study on a Wednesday night, helping run youth on a Friday night. And then obviously being a part of a service, kids ministry or something on a Sunday. Some others have very specific areas. They're really music focused. So that's, you know, they're running a music team and doing that with kids and adults. We've had others who are a bit more sort of out there oriented. So they've been doing some things in church and then doing some chaplaincy in schools. So we've got them alongside a chaplain. So yeah, but we say set aside about a day for practical hands-on ministry. And for us, we also ask them to set aside a week at the start of the year for an intensive, which is partly just getting to know each other and sort of starting the year with a bang. And previous to this year, we had also a mission trip overseas. But obviously this year has been a little bit of a different year. But that's also been something that they fundraise towards. And it's sort of this exciting sort of capstone for the year. This year, we're probably going to finish the year more with a spiritual retreat. So they can ask the question, where to from here? Where to from here? And we're going to sort of do some Zoom sessions with missionaries and others as well. And we also try and week to week invite other ministry leaders and ministries in to speak with our interns, usually over a lunch break. So it might be someone from the chaplaincy, youth care WA, or a missionary family to come and talk to them, or other pastors, or I've got a farmer who uses his house to support missionaries when they come. And I get him to come and say, hey, tell us about how ministry looks for you as a farmer, but you've got some resources to share, how he's a benefactor for the gospel. So, yeah, so that's sort of roughly how our weeks look. And we follow sort of school terms. And that's partly because we made a decision to shorten our days slightly. So it's more like a 9 till 3:30 day, but then it's longer terms, just so younger parents can access it as well. They drop kids off and then come along, and then they can finish and run off to school and grab the kids who are that sort of age. But it just means we sort of have to lengthen out our terms a little bit more than a typical uni semester. So we've got a bit of flexibility in that regard as well. So yeah, hopefully that answers the practical question there, Stephen.
Yeah, thanks, Damon. That's great, just to give us an insight into the sort of the mechanics of how you've set up your program. And clearly, different churches can look at doing that in different ways, depending on different contexts and so forth. But it really just highlights, I think, the Albany story, if you like, just highlights what can be achieved in a country town here in Australia. And we're really excited about that and the potential of what you're doing becoming a bit of a model for other country towns. And I might say too that there might be a context or a situation where there's a church that can't do the training face-to-face. Like Damon, you'd have trainers that are approved. You've done the certificate for foreign training and assessment, so your trainers can actually deliver face-to-face. Other contexts won't be able to do that, and so you can therefore access the online version of this CMT, which is being developed right now. So I'd also like to reflect too on how does churches grow through an internship program, just a little bit from my experience in Mauritius, where effectively through the Bible College there, we offered some vocational training. It wasn't a CMT as such, but it was a diploma, a vocational diploma. And likewise, we were very much mentoring, hands-on with a number of Mauritians. And personally, one of the results of a guy that I was mentoring, who was going through the Bible College course with me at the same time, putting into practice what he's learning, we managed, well, the Lord planted the church through us, but it was very exciting to plant a church in Terrouge and to see that continue on today and see the way that Bible College still works with that small church in training other leaders in that context. So vocational training, in fact, that Bible College in Mauritius is just now connecting with us at Eastern here with 3 students who will do some online units as well, just to encourage the work in Mauritius. So I just mentioned that as another example of the way you can access this training through the CMT online wherever you are in Australia. It could be in a very isolated part of the country, but you can still access a lot of this material. Of course, though, we'd love you to come to Wantirna if you can, if you're nearby, and join our face-to-face courses. All going well, we'll be able to go face-to-face early next year. And we just love to work with students, but recognising that our students are very much a part of a local church context. And so we want to be encouraging them back into the local church context to develop ministry skills and to grow in faith and life and understanding in Christ. I guess one question, maybe we'd be happy to chat to you more about this at another time, but it might be along the lines of, well, how do you set up an internship program? And I think what Damon shared has been very helpful in giving us a really solid and effective example of that. And Damon's right, it really starts with leadership, doesn't it? A commitment from the leadership of your church through prayer, definitely a prayerful approach to thinking through how, in your context, you can tackle this issue of training within the local church context. Perhaps then, like in Albany, setting apart someone like Damon who's specifically focused on ensuring that this training happens. So a training director or coordinator, whatever you like to call that role. And delegating that out to somebody to help pull everything together, the different pieces, the different components that are built into an internship program. And I guess going back to culture, creating a culture in your church that encourages people to look towards this as a part of their formation. Most people I chat to, I always encourage them. I say, look, if you can manage somewhere in your life, do at least 1 year of sort of more formal Bible college training. Look, it may not go on to more training or a full-time ministry position, but you'll have that with you for the rest of your life in whatever situation or context you might find yourself in. And in fact, a lot of the skills and the things that we do in the CMT would be very valuable for you back in the workplace, in the secular workplace, in giving you some confidence in the gospel, some tools to read the Bible with others, and to do that with confidence so that you can share the gospel and grow the church in and through your workplace context. So that kind of culture that the CMT and an internship program allows in your context will feed on itself, we trust and pray. And so as interns, encourage others to say, hey, I found this of great benefit, why don't you try it out as well? Others will join in as the years roll on. So, and I guess, reading something like The Trellis and the Vine and just sort of getting back to some of the things that they highlight in terms of putting something back. Great book to read through just to think through the methodology and the approach to something like this. There's other books out there, of course, too, but we just recommend that one as a minimum. So, Jude, I'd like to head back to you. I don't know if there's any questions that have popped up, but happy to open up to some question and answer time. Thank you, Jude.
Thanks, Stephen, and thanks, Damon. It's really great to hear Damon's enthusiasm for all that he's doing. And I was privileged to go over and visit Albany and meet the interns, and it was just great. I would just like to ask the question, though, Stephen, do you have to actually be in a formal internship to do the Certificate 4 in Christian Ministry and Theology?
Good question, Jude. No, not at all. So we don't need a formal internship as such, but we do require a placement. And a placement doesn't have to come along with what a formal church internship might have. The placement is an opportunity in a team or in a ministry context where there is some supervision and you get to put into practice some of the things that we're talking about and training and equipping you for. It may not have the same requirements as an internship might have. We have a minimum requirement of sort of 30 to 40 hours in that kind of placement ministry experience. So no, you don't need a formal internship to enroll in the CMT.
Thanks, Stephen, because we focused on internships, but the course itself is actually a standalone course. Someone's just popped up and said, does the internship need to be done in the context of a church, or could it be a parachurch ministry? Well, the answer to that can be anything. It could even be in your workplace. It doesn't have to be a specific church context. Could be camping, could be in a school, could be pretty much anything. It would just be something you'd negotiate with us. Someone's asked a very important question, Stephen, about how much does the course cost per student? So I can answer that. The cost is $2,800 for the whole course, which is over a year. You can actually pay it in instalments. You don't have to have the money up front. And they're also saying, would Eastern help just in the process of thinking about how to set up an internship within the church? Do you want to speak to that one, Stephen?
Yeah, sure. I'd be happy to take a call if someone was really keen to talk through what that might look like. I know Damon too wouldn't mind encouraging this kind of thing. Absolutely be happy to chat to someone if you wanted to talk through that.
Okay, and another question, is it only for young people? Well, I think Damon answered that beautifully. You know, age range from sort of 18 to 70 is pretty significant. I think there's there's a lot of programs around like that are gap years that might be just focused on school leavers. There are some real advantages in having a diversity of ages in a group. It brings a richness to your learning. Would you like to talk about that, Damon?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I'd agree with you, Jude. I mean, there is something about learning a community with people who are different to you, whether that's culturally, or we've got the Karen and Noongar people and Anglo-Aussies, and then also age and gender differences. So, I mean, there's something about that you know, God's on about unity and diversity, right? Not uniformity. And I think particularly for young people these days, like seeing themselves as a part of the broader body. So if you're coming out of high school, you know, you've been streamed your whole life, right? You know, you were the same age kids from year 6, you know, you pre-primary all the way to grade 12, that's suddenly stepping out as an adult. Like, well, hello, you have to mingle with people and interact with people and serve with people who are not exactly like you, and not your peer group. And so I think there's something so healthy in that, and something actually quite God glorifying, something that Jesus is doing, the body of Christ, you know, bringing such diverse group of people together as one. And I think I've said this recently, you know, Jesus saves us into a transformative community, and he transforms us by being in community. And it's all those little differences that actually help chisel us and make us more like Jesus. So yeah, I think there's a great benefit for all groups to come together, whatever age and gender and background.
Thanks, Damon. And so we're still just clarifying about this internship. Someone's asking, just to clarify, students can enrol in this course and just do placement in their own home churches. And the answer is definitely. You don't need to be in a formal internship relationship. And you might even be the start of something within your church that may grow into an internship program. Or you might just be someone within who really wants to grow in their faith and explore what is God doing in your life. It doesn't need to be linked to a formal internship as such. But as Stephen said, there's a practical part to it where we want people to be doing some sort of ministry, working with other people, and that can be all sorts of different things. So hopefully we've covered that one. I've just got another question. Stephen, to what extent would this course equip someone for a paid position in the church? You know, like you get a qualification. Is there any opportunity to get a job at the end of it?
Yeah, definitely, Jude. I think this course equips a student in the CMT, very well for a paid position. It could be, an associate kind of role. Even in some contexts, it could even be pastoring a church in some of the rural contexts of Australia, for example. But certainly as an assistant or an associate or a youth minister, music ministry, creative arts, songwriting, this course is sort of foundational and can lead into a variety of employment opportunities. And I might just jump in there too, Jude, to say in answer to the earlier question, this course, while this webinar is focusing on it in relation to an internship program, the CMT also has a very clear focus on transforming and forming the individual, the person, in their own personal walk with the Lord Jesus. I mean, that is the main focus of the course. So in terms of your own character formation, the unit will do through the Gospel of Mark on discipleship. We'll take a close look at who you are in relationship to your Lord. And they're all prerequisites. You know, character formation is prerequisites to a job. You need to have those sorts of things sorted out as well in terms of being employable in a church or mission or parachurch context.
I think a lot of people would like to know, is it a lot of work? How much time do you have to actually come to classes? And so if you're doing it at Wantirna, we heard from Damon, the sort of program they have there. What's the workload like doing it at Wantirna?
I think similar to how Damon shared it, we're going to have one day a week where you'll be in face-to-face classes. It'll be a fairly full day. You'll also get to experience the life of the wider college of the MST Eastern College. We're hoping to have that day on the same day that we have chapel. So you'll be exposed and certainly welcomed into the wider life of the college. So that's a day a week. Then likewise, up to a day a week of your own reading, reflecting and praying. And then depending on whether you're doing a placement or an internship, that might be another day or two. That depends on your own sort of situation. But at a minimum, around, sort of 5 hours a week, maybe not a full day, but certainly some hours per week involved in a placement, ministry placement of sorts. And then, of course, there is an understanding that you're involved in the life of your local church as well. So these are called unsupervised hours. There will be an expectation that you're going along to church, you're in a small group, and you're reading the Bible, on your own in your personal devotions as well. So all those hours, while we don't actually add them up, we recognise that you are doing these sorts of things throughout the week, which all contribute to what's required for the CMT.
Thanks, Stephen. So learning is much more than just class time, really. As Christians, we're always learning, and there's all different ways that we might be doing that. And we want to really encourage people to be growing and learning throughout all of the week. But there are certain requirements that we have. Now, the other thing Damon mentioned was about the young fellow who went on to do some further theological study. Damon, we're having further conversations about this, about the pathways that are available. Do you want to talk about that, just in case people are interested about what can you do after this certificate for?
Yes. And I'll say the Cert 4 CMT over here, one of our chaplaincy providers to schools, that Cert 4 CMT is like a minimum requirement. It will get people in the door to be a chaplain, and then the organisation will make them do one or two more units with a specific focus. So it actually is a pathway in that regard in our context. So we're exploring, okay, so someone's done a Cert 4 CMT. How do they then go on into Bible college? So with Jude and Easton at MS2, we've been exploring this option. We've been talking about doing a diploma in arts, which with a ministry specialisation next year, where in our context we'll run potentially a few units locally. They will then get some credits from having done the certificate 4, and then they'll do some online units, either with Eastern College or with Melbourne School of Theology. And then of course, if you've done that Cert 4 for a student in WA, if they've done their ATAR, or I think in Victoria it's the VCE, or the HSC, then if they haven't done that, the certificate 4 can actually be an entryway into all sorts of other degrees for them. So they can use that as a pathway into higher education. And it's a good testing ground too. They will develop some writing skills and do some reading, and they go, okay, can I actually handle another step up beyond this? But we're super keen on looking at how there's a pathway for students. And in fact, we've gone back the other way too. We've got a Certificate 3 in Christian Ministry and Theology for high schoolers. So they can do that, Cert 4, ideally diploma, and then on. All the way to Doctorate of Ministry, right, at MST, Jude.
That's right, Damon. We just want people to stay with us for 20 years. That's all it is. But I do think it's important to understand that if you get a taste for learning in a more formal environment as a Christian, that none of that's wasted, that it all builds as you go through. And I think that's really helpful. Well, I don't think we've got any more questions there. Stephen or Damon, have you got any final comments you'd like to make? Stephen first.
Stephen, yes.
No, just to say, look, we have an open door, and if you'd like to make a call, contact us. Contact Daisy. She's fantastic, our enrolment officer. She can answer your questions as well. But yeah, I think just prayerfully, if you're listening and thinking about yourself, yeah, make it a matter of prayer. But even those around you, who else might this be suited to in your context, and you could encourage them to step out and grasp this opportunity. I think it really is a fantastic opportunity, this CMT. Yeah, so I would love to hear from you, love to see some people enroll, and if we can get that critical mass of a group starting early next year, then yeah, we'd be super excited about that. In fact, just on that, we've got, because the online CMT commenced just this semester, we've got 9 students doing one unit and 11 students doing another unit. So already there's some real interest in this CMT, and that really encourages us to keep moving forward on this. So it's great.
No, excellent. Thanks.
How about final words from the West?
Thank you. Yeah, look, probably 2 things. One would just be, like Stephen said, whether you can set up a full-on internship or, utilising Eastern for offering an online Cert 4 and then supporting even an individual in your church, I think go for it. Do what you can do. I'm really excited by what Eastern has set up and the possibilities for it. And the second thing to say is I just wanted to encourage people that we have found Eastern College Australia and Melbourne School of Theology such fantastic partners. There's a great mission focus, a service orientation, a Christ focus. And I think it's in the lifeblood of the college there, this idea for mission and ministry and equipping others. So lots of Bible colleges say that, we're on about the church, but these guys are, they're on about what God's doing and wanting to get behind that. So if you are thinking of partnering with Eastern to set up something in your church, I definitely recommend them and give them my highest commendation. So yeah, go for it. As Stephen said, prayerfully step out. So thanks, and great to be with you all today.
Thanks very much, Damon. And we'd just like to thank you so much for joining us. And if you would like to talk to someone further, you can contact us through the website. Stephen is more than happy to chat with people, and so is Damon, and so am I. If you'd like some help in how to actually set up an internship, I reckon Stephen would be the best person to chat with initially, particularly if it's here in Melbourne. We would love to hear from you. I believe that the email contacts for each of us will be available, but if not, just go through the website and it'll be directed straight to us, and we'll give you a call. I'd like to thank Damon and Stephen for all that they've shared with us, and it is really exciting to see what God is doing through this very special way of learning. So thanks for joining us, and we encourage you to keep on participating in Open Week. This evening we have a special session on mental health for Christians, which for those of us here in Victoria is probably a pretty important topic at the moment. That starts at 7 p.m. tonight. So blessings to you all. Thank you for joining us.